Welcome to the second biannual State of the Church address. We are glad you're here. I want to start from the beginning. I've got a fancy clicker today. Start from the beginning and kind of refresh our memory why we do the State of the Church. The State of the Church is an attempt for me to be able to communicate to the church. As the church gets bigger, it becomes a lot more difficult to convey what's going on. While my door is open, as long as I have room and time, if you say, I want to have an appointment with you, Daniel, I want to be available for you. If everybody in the room did that, you realize I would have no time, right? And I couldn't possibly do that. So this is one of the attempts we have to convey to you what's going on and progressing in the church. It's also a moment to pause and to celebrate what our vision is and to celebrate how God is moving in our midst and among us. We tweaked a few things from last time. We tried to listen to you. At the end, there will be a question and answer time. Instead of texting the questions, we are going to have Reggie, the great, walking around with microphones. And I think Bob Davies is going to be walking around with the microphone and so to let you ask questions at the end. But as always, what we are going to do is pause at the end of that time and allow people who want to leave at that time before they ask questions, as well as a few other things. Right from the beginning, let's just get into it and remind ourselves, I got to turn this on. Oops. This is our verse. This is the epitome of what we're about. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe everything I've commanded you. And remember, I am with you always to the end of the age. You've heard this last series, right? It is the premise of what we're about. We are a church that believes that we should make followers who make followers of Jesus. That's easier said than done sometimes. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to come to a place where we are making followers who make followers. And you're going to see that we have a lot of reasons to celebrate and a lot of evidence of this happening. In 2013, here's just a little example. In 2013, in the month of March, we averaged 273 people a week in worship attendance. In March of 2014, our weekly average was 458. I'm not a math whiz, so I'm not going to tell you the percentage of that right now, but it's around 60%, a little over 60%. And the attendance, and this accounts kids, that 650 number is a little misleading because there's some duplication of that. In other words, a kid who's counted in the CIA room may come into worship, but it's a number we keep just to track how we're doing. It rounds out to about 650 people. So if you really do the math, what that means is we're a church of around 600 people on any given Sunday. And so why is this important? Numbers are just numbers, except that they stand and represent people who are encountering God. We have new families. This is the safari room, I think 2 weeks ago. And if you count the little number of kindergarten heads there, I think you'll get 23 or 24. Oh, they're so cute. They are so cute. And that was from a person who didn't even have a kid in the picture. So that's good. They are very cute, and this is exciting. This is the age demographic we are reaching the most. Parents with young children, young adults, young families, although we are seeing a great influx in the last 4 or 5 months of people in the 30 to 50-year-old range as well. We have the college group that meets in my house on Sunday nights. It's kind of hard to see that picture. We started with 4, and I think last week we had around 32. Emily says 32, she knows. So we had 32 college students, and that's really exciting to see what God's doing. We had the mission trip to Honduras. Some of you, they just got back, and in a month from now, on the first weekend in May, pencil it in, we're going to have our outdoor barbecue, and then their missions teams are going to come and celebrate and share a lot of what's happened there, as well as the Becks will get a moment to share, the Millers will get a moment to share, and the Panama City group that we're going to get to in a second is going to get a chance to share. We're a church that's becoming more and more global, more and more on mission to see what God is doing in our midst. Here's the pictures of the beach reach, the college students that went down and what they did, in case you didn't know. Ben Beck and Nettie did a great job of doing this through the PCM. What they did is they picked up college students and gave them free rides at like 2 a.m. So you can imagine the state of what they were in. And their purpose was just to start conversations about God. And then what they did is they invited them to a pancake breakfast. And you'd be surprised how many kids in that state are broken. They go down to have a great time, and then they find that this isn't anything what I thought it would be. and they're very open and receptive to Jesus. So it wasn't forceful, but it was intentional. And God really moved in some mighty ways. The Chinese New Year Festival was a great event, and Susie and her husband just deserve all the credit in the world, and so many of you poured out in that, and this room was filled with internationals, and that is such a great ministry. We have the community garden that's going, helping reach the international families, and it's a wonderful time of celebration. We could celebrate lots of snow, right? I'm just kidding. I'm not really celebrating lots of snow. That was an attempt to me. Here's what it really boils down to me. We had 37 baptisms since the start of 2013, most of those since Easter last year to Easter this year. We have 14 more scheduled to be baptized this month alone. We have 6 scheduled to be baptized Sunday and 8 more to be scheduled to be baptized April 27th. And this is exciting because this is God doing things. This is when we as a church can look back and go, we are a church that's making followers who are making followers. In other words, we're not robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're not stealing people from other churches in droves. We're reaching people who aren't involved in churches. Now, there will be people coming from other churches, and we celebrate that. But what we really celebrate more than that is when God influences the lives of someone and they come to a place where they say, I want to follow Jesus. So this is exciting. Here's some pictures of the new followers. I wish you could be up there in that room upstairs right before it's such a neat experience and such a neat moment. We're going to pause just for a brief moment now and recognize the staff. Another thing I heard from you is, who's the staff, right? So we're going to let them have a chance to speak for a minute or two if they want to. Craig's in the back. Craig, y'all know Craig. You see his face much visible. He has clothes coming. He says he's sorry that he's in the shorts, but he's glad we're glad he's here. Craig, did you have anything you want to say from the worship perspective?
Coming up, obviously, you guys know some really awesome stuff's going to happen around Easter. We're doing something that we've never done before. We're taking, what God is already doing in here, and we're taking it outside of our walls for a couple reasons. One, because we can't do it in here because we'd have to have like 8 services or something like that. And he's already told me I'm not allowed to sing that much. So anyway. So it's really awesome because we're not just taking it outside the walls, but we're going to a place that's really kind of disarming for people. You know, it's not really scary to walk into a high school for, maybe it is for church. I don't know. But if you were here this last week, you may have gotten one of these cards. So if you got one of these cards last week, we really want you to fill this out because we're going to need all hands on deck this Easter. We're praying and just expecting that God's going to do some amazingly great things that we can't even imagine yet, that are going to happen on Easter and because of Easter, and what he's going to do with our church and our community as we just trust in him and do something completely different, completely off of the norm for us. And one of those things is this card. So if you got one of these this last week, you also get one this coming Sunday. Fill this out. This is a really cool card because you can actually tear these apart, which is pretty cool. I didn't even know we had one of these things, but it's a perforator, and it's really cool. I kind of wanted to start perforating everything that I have because you can tear it in half. So anyway, if you guys have a family, this is like, especially for like kids and just married couples and that kind of thing. Door hangers are like probably the coolest thing that you can do because you can get a whole bunch of door hangers, just drive around in the community wherever you're going. And not only are you just like hanging these things on the door so that you're inviting people, but you can also take that time to just pray for other families and other couples that are living in our area around us. And that's a really cool thing. The power of prayer is absolutely one of the best things that we can take advantage of. Another thing you can sign up for is set up on the morning of. You'll get there at 7 a.m., and you can't complain about that because the worship team is going to be here at 5:45. So get there at 7 a.m. to help set up. We're going to have things like info booths and coffee and that kind of stuff that's going to have to start getting set up so that we can be ready for the services to start. Greeters, we need plenty of greeters at the doors, people who can just point people to the auditorium and that kind of stuff, and just even kind of a better thing than the greeters for you to sign up for is what I like to refer to as our first impressions of our first impressions team, which is our parking lot team. Many of you may have noticed on Sundays we have a few guys out in the parking lot that just stand there, and they go, hey. And you would not believe how important that is for people. We've had people drive past here and literally just turn in because there's guys standing out by the road smiling at them. And it's just like, it's really cool when somebody comes in and they're like, is that guy out there representing what's in here? He really is. He's like the very first thing that people will notice about our church on Sunday. And then the greeters are like the time where as soon as they walk through the door and they're like, okay, is it really that good that guy was smiling about it? And then they see the greeters and they're like, yeah, it really is a good representation of what's out there. So greeters, ushers, we need plenty of ushers. We actually need at least like 5 or 6 per service. And then if you're already an usher, let me know if you're interested, but we need a couple of you to really step up and just kind of be leaders on that team that day because it's going to be done a little bit differently. The auditorium there is set up different than this, and so we're going to need a little bit more leadership on that part. But if you haven't ever done ushering and you'd like to try it out, that would be a great time to do it because you'll have a lot of other guys up there with you.
Just getting water.
All right. Childcare, we're going to have childcare for 5 and under. It's really important that we have people with our kids because I've left mine by themselves and it's not a good thing. So, and then obviously you can't leave out prayer. If you love God, if you love talking to God, please step up and at least be a prayer warrior for us that day. We're looking to have a team that's going to be praying before, during, and after our services that day, just praying over everything that's going on, everybody that's coming in, and even the people that are just driving past and not coming in, just praying for all those people. And then obviously we're going to have to do some follow-up too. There's going to be a lot of people that sign up to get connected and that want more information about Calvary, and we're going to need a lot more hands-on to help us connect with all of those people. So you'll get one of these this weekend, and if you won't be here this weekend and you didn't get one the last weekend, you can raise your hand and I'll run one of these to you right now. All right?
Thanks, Craig. Boop, boop. Larry Baxter.
Thank you.
Make sure and tell them what you do.
All right. Hi, guys. My name is Larry Baxter. My primary role here is in admin and finance, and I want to thank you for making my job so difficult. You guys are crazy generous. God's been really unleashing your hearts to give things for not only tithes and offerings, but for mission trips. So just stuff is going in and out. It's great. Last year, we increased the budget by 30%. We quadrupled our missions budget. I'm really excited about that. And so one of the things we were wondering is, okay, how long is it going to take before giving actually starts to reflect the budget? Now, January was a little rough. We had snow cancellations, just a little bit of snow. Coldest record ever, bad one. But in February and March, we have been having donations and gifts that are already almost 10% above the budget, which is over 30% of last year. So basically, God is doing great things in the hearts of people, and it's showing up in the enthusiasm they have for ministry and for mission. So that is great. My secondary role here is helping out with connect groups and small groups. We've launched a couple of connect groups recently. They've been having just a great time getting to know one another, studying the Bible, and we've been doing all kinds of fun things in people's home, eating Filipino food, going out to Wings, etc. So it is a good way to meet some new people, make some new friends, study the Bible, and find out what small group life is all about. So if you're interested in that, just let me know and I can get you connected.
Thanks. Is Amy Anthony in here? I think she's with the kids. Trevor Oakes. Trevor started 4 hours ago, so we're glad he's here. Thanks.
Hey, I love to base my ministry, anything that I do, off of love God, love people, and that is far-reaching through all ebbs and flows of the church. And what that transitions into is people matter. Relationships matter, and everything that I love to do through ministry flows through relationship. As I've ministered through my time in ministry, what I've come to find out is until I know you, I really don't have an opportunity to minister with you. As I look over my life and reflect back on some decisions or things I've made in my life, I typically call people that I'm in a relationship with. And so that's how I try to do every aspect of ministry is through relationships, through loving God and pointing and directing everything at His truth and His life. And a better way to live your life is if you can love God with all that you are and then love people. And in that, what I've found is that is deep and wide, and that's the hope for ministry. And so been here 4 hours. But that's the hope, is to get in relationships with each of you. And if you're sitting in these chairs, that means you love this place. You're interested in this place. You're excited about this place. And so I'm thankful for you here tonight, and I'm excited for the future of getting into relationships with you and loving God together with you. And look, there's Amy Anthony, so she can come up here.
Yay. Hey, Reggie, we're going to let Amy go because she stepped out of the children's room for a second. Amy Anthony. We already talked about how that was bad.
We just
Craig talked about
Easter.
Easter.
Markers and said, try to avoid the walls.
Craig talked about Easter, by the way, Amy.
What am I doing? Just
VBS.
VBS. Okay. So just a quick report on VBS. Most of you know that a couple months ago, we decided that we would step out on a leap of faith and craziness and add evening VBS to our morning VBS, because last year we exceeded our number of kids that we can safely have and had to turn kids away, and we didn't want to do that this year. So I am so excited that we are seriously in a better shape as far as percentage of spots filled for volunteers at this point for both put together than we usually are for one, which is amazing. So we are having our kickoff training on the 12th, and there are still a few spots open, like the lead for the 3s and 4s, which I know is like a hot spot. No, but it's still a very blessing. So anyway, we're very excited about that, excited to really reach a lot more families this year. So you can be praying for that and praying, because the next thing after we get our training done on the 12th is we'll start promoting it to the community and getting lots of kids in. So very exciting. Is that?
Sure. Did you tell them what you do? Does everybody know what you do? You are I'm
the children's minister.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, sir. Very good. Reggie. He's going to stay down here.
I was thinking about 4 hours. I've been here for 2.5 years, and I came here in a very interesting way. And I can tell you, I am so glad to be here and a part of what God is doing today. Today is good, and it's exciting to be a part of the church and what the future has. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of it.
Thank you. You can just put it right there. Also want to take just a moment and recognize the rest of our staff. We got Bob Davies, who works with Celebrate Recovery. Bob and Jackie, excuse me. Y'all both can stand up. The wonderful Dave Walters, wherever Dave is. He's working right now. We're thankful for Dave and all he does around the facilities. Melinda Riley, are you here? In charge of Jumpstart. Amy Cade, who works in the front office. And the outgoing, who is already standing, Erica Benedict, who's moving to Murray. I'm doing this off the top of my head. Did I forget someone? If I did, don't get mad. There's Dave. Me. And I'm here, so we're glad you're here. God is doing a lot of wonderful things, and we're excited about those things. Let me just kind of, after we go through all this, the question then really comes into this. What's next? Well, Trevor has started as full-time youth and teaching pastor. We're excited about that. The volunteers, Amy told you, the volunteers are starting to come, but it's a snowball effect. Like, the more we have coming, the more volunteers we need, and the more volunteers we have, the more people come. And so we're getting the steam rolling. It's coming, kind of like the finances. We're sitting there going, we need more volunteers. They're starting to come, but it's lagging a little behind, especially in the children's ministry on Sunday morning when you have 24 kindergartners in the safari room. But God is so faithful. And what I would encourage you is, if you're not actively serving in a place from this church, there is a place for you. And there just is. And Craig and Amy are largely the ones who will help hook you up with the right place to serve. But we need you to serve an hour a week. Youth, you have a place here to serve. We want you to serve. We're thankful for you all being here and what you can do for all of that. So God is doing a lot of exciting things. The small groups are growing. New groups need to be formed. Small groups is one of my big things for this year because we have a lot of established groups who've been a long time, and then we have a lot of people who really don't fit into those established groups because there's so much rapport already established with those groups. So imagine this. You've been involved in a group for 15 years and a new person walks in. How long does it take before they feel really comfortable in that group? And that's kind of where we're at. We're trying to figure out what is that next step. And I'm going to be talking a lot with you all. If you have input on that, please come talk to me. And I'm going to be initiating that, especially if you're a small group leader. Expect that coming before the next State of the Church. I'm going to be initiating some conversations with you and just trying to figure out what is our next step. I don't have all the answers to that, but it's one of the main areas we're tackling. Easter is at Harrison High School. We're so excited about that. They say you should be able to double your attendance on Easter Sunday. Let me tell you next week what we're going to be doing. Next week we're having a pep rally, and the pep rally is really a recruitment rally. And so if you're interested in helping serve in this church on Easter Sunday, please come. If it means you can't be here, but you're going to hand out 50 door hangers, please come. If you could just come and pray during that hour, please come. We're not going to try to waste your time. We want to get people excited. Another thing we're going to be doing, hot off the presses, is I need to talk to John, make sure we're allowed to do this in the city. I like being thrown under the bus like that. But our plan is to take glass chalk and write on windows and have a driving billboards asking our church members to go out. Is that legal in this town? As long as you don't block the front, I'll talk to you later. If it's legal, we're going to try to do that on the sides. And so that as long as the view is not obstructed, and really try to have driving vehicles. He's looking it up now. Okay, so this is what we're going to try to do because we want people to be excited and coming in. And then the last one is we have to figure out our long-term solution for overcrowding. And I want to pause just for a second here. I want to pause and just reiterate something. What God has done here, I never would have imagined when I got here. What God has done here and is doing here is way beyond Daniel's expectations. And let me just tell you something. When you sit in my chair, to be very vulnerable with you right now, that's a hard place to be. Because I'm trying to cast the vision knowing that I'm capable of making error. I'm trying to cast the vision with an avalanche of a snowball and trying to stay ahead of it, knowing that no matter what I do, it's change. And some people love change. And some people change is very scary. I love change. And can I be honest with you? This is a little scary. To say, God, I am accountable to you for the direction we're heading. And to really trust in the people that this church has elected as leaders and overseers, as it's used to describe throughout the Bible, and to really try to communicate to you all effectively what is happening and effectively the vision. I would love to sit down and have coffee with each and every one of you and keep you update with everything that's happening. But honestly, by 2:00 in the afternoon, it's changed from 8:00 in the morning. And that's where we are. And so what I would tell you is, am I making mistakes? Yes. Am I doing my best? Yes. Do I believe that God is in this? Yes, because let's be honest, Daniel Barry can't do this. And so what I would caution you right now is no matter what you're feeling, whether you're like, this is awesome, or whether you're the person who's sitting there going, this is a bit overwhelming, take it to Jesus. Because I don't want to do anything here that isn't glorifying to him. I don't want to do anything in here that isn't honoring to him. And if you take it to Jesus and then you sit there and you go, I think we're headed the wrong direction, come talk to me. Now, I haven't had anybody come do that to me, but I'm just telling you, if I were in your shoes, I would sometimes be going, this is very overwhelming. And I would go, you're right, conceited. But I don't think it's us being conceited as long as we're glorifying God. So would you do me a favor? Would you pray for the staff and the leadership of this church? Would you pray for the teams that have been elected to help steer me and steer the direction of this church? To pray for the VAT with wonderful people on it. to pray for the youth leaders as they're embarking on this whole new journey with this guy and what do we jail? I don't know. To pray for the different dynamics, for volunteers to be, because I think prayer is essential. To pray for the prayer ministry and this wonderful couple who has held it together for so long without any accolades or praise. To pray for the deacons as they serve, to pray and to say, I am going to pray, because when we pray, we make followers who make followers. And may God be glorified. So what I'm going to share with you now is a little bit of the vision for the future. Is it right? It's the best I got today. And it may change. And I'm going to share with you tonight what I think is more certain. And I'm not going to share some things which is going to be like, you didn't share enough. And I'm going to say, you're right. But the reason I'm not going to share everything tonight is because we got to let the process work out, because I don't want to lead you the wrong way. Is that fair enough? So let's go. The VAT, 6 months ago, I shared this exact slide the last State of the Church. If you weren't here, this is new to you. If you were, this should be a repeat. I'm sure you all remember it. We addressed two needs that we had. And the first one was we're out of space. The second need was we desire Calvary's budget to be healthy and in line with our vision. And what we said in that last meeting is we're not tackling point one in that tonight. This was 6 months ago. We're not tackling point one 6 months ago because we have to first tackle point two. Our budget was unhealthy. Not in that giving was coming in, but that we weren't giving enough away. We weren't being missional with our finances. We weren't recognizing that some things need to happen. You have responded as God has responded, as we have been faithful, and God has blessed us with this area. Now, you all go, oh God, they don't need our money anymore. And then we'll be back here 6 months from now saying, we got to get this financial stuff going. But God is doing some amazing things. When you look at where we were in March last year to March this year, and I'm not going to get into the numbers because if you want that, Larry Baxter would be more than willing to sit down and talk. He's thrilled that I'm saying this right now. But we want to be as open book as we can possibly be. Now, there's some limitations to that, and we can tell you what those are later, but we want to be as open book as we can be. So you can talk to Larry and ask him questions and say, because you give to this church, and we have responsibility to report as much as we can to you how that's spent. But God is doing some amazing things. And money is going away to the International Mission Board. We are supporting a missionary overseas right now much more than we were last year because you have been faithful. We're supporting our state convention much more because you're being faithful. We are supporting Young Life for the first time because you have been faithful in giving. And that's exciting. There are other things, other areas, Habitat for Humanity, that we're trying to build up, and we're just getting on the cusp of that. As we continue to grow, here's my hope. The percentage of giving continues to grow. But where we are right now is healthy. I just want us to be like supermodel healthy. No, that's not healthy at all. I take that back. I want to be normal person healthy, okay? I want us to be extremely healthy and beyond healthy and say, I would love for us to get to where our church gives 20% away. Now, that's not going to happen this year. That's a 1% a year get there kind of goal, okay? But we are giving away 11.1% for global causes. And I think that's what makes us healthy right now. The second thing we have to start tackling is we're out of space. We have to recognize that 24 children in the safari room, I've seen it, you've seen it, you may not recognize it, but when mamas drop their kids off or daddies drop their kids off in the safari room, and there's 24 kids, their first reaction is, church is so exciting, and their second reaction is, do I want to leave my kid in this room? And the reality of that is, it would be great, except that it's getting there in 9 o'clock as well. It's not just the worship space. You realize that the biggest problem we have space-wise is actually not worship, because we still have room for people to scoot in, and adults like that for a while. The biggest problem we have is we have no children's space. We have to address that, or young families are going to quit coming. And that's the reality. We need to create more space for other adults to meet. We have one room right now for adults to meet. We had a class that was meeting in my office for a long time until another room opened up. And I'm fine with that. We'll have my office, anybody can meet in there as long as we have codes upstairs. But Come on, meet in my office. Let's do these things because that means people need to know about Jesus. And so we have to address it. So what we did is we began an exploratory process. The fact-finding team was appointed by the VAT. By the way, I want to make sure everyone understands when I say VAT. That is the Vision Advisory Team. If you serve on that team, I'm not trying to embarrass you, but would you mind standing just so they can put a hand to the face? We have Lane and Gary and Karen and Tammy. And this is the team that meets in Trevor. Trevor doesn't know he's on that team yet, but he's on that team as well. Thank you. And this team, we pray. We pray a lot. And what we've been trying to do is figure out what this next step. So we appointed a fact-finding team. Doug Sable chaired this team. And basically what they did is they were trying to gather the facts of all the possible solutions to our space problems. That's supposed to say problems. It doesn't. You could read over something 14 times and not know it. We looked at 5 options. 2 options were deemed factually illogical. What those 2 options are, it really doesn't matter, except I'll tell you one of them, okay? One of the options was to do nothing. I think when you start running the numbers and you start looking at it from our perspective, the fact of we will not grow anymore until we start doing something. We could start meeting at Harrison High School every week if y'all really want to, and that we may come to that for a little while, I don't know. But we can't keep growing unless you want me to do 6, 7 services, something like that. And even then, you start losing the prime times when people want to come. You follow me? And so what we had, it was illogical to us. There was one other solution that we did. Then there was 3 that required further explanation and exploration. And I would love to tell you those tonight, except that we are currently exploring the other 3 options. Now, I will tell you, I'm 80% sure where we're headed. Why am I not sharing that 80% with you right now? Because there's a 20% chance we're not. And once you share something to a group of people this size, you know what happens is they go, that's what we're doing. And you might think, I wouldn't be that one. You're right. But you'll tell someone and they will. And I don't want to be the person who gives you false promises and false vision. So what does that lead? It means we got to establish a timeline for the church to vote on moving forward, because we are not going to do anything without permission from this church. And steps are being taken to ensure that this has been done wisely. So what are the steps? Well, we have 3 premises first. 3 premises. How big should we build if we build? Okay? Look at this line. This is the question we had asked. To double our church size twice, we'd be a church of 2,000. Why 2,000? Here's why. In West Lafayette, that's probably as big as we possibly should ever be. Why? Because we're in West Lafayette. We're not in Indianapolis. And so if we have 2,000 people here, and I'm not saying we will ever get to 2,000 people. Everybody repeat after me. We're not saying, you don't have to really do it. We're not saying we're going to get to a church of 2,000, okay? But we need to be geared up to reach that many people. And then if we get to that size, what ends up happening is you're going to see pockets of people coming from Brookston, or a big pocket coming from South Lafayette, or a big pocket of people coming from the other cities that I can never remember the name of. And then what we need to be doing is we need to be saying we need to be planting there. That's the long-term vision. We don't want to build up a major metropolis worship Calvary here. We want to be intentional and have people going to a church close to their home that they're excited about and that glorifies God. So the number of 2,000, thank you for that, I like the amen. 2,000 is an arbitrary number, but it's a number we had to come up with to explore the option. Okay, so that's the first premise. The second premise, by the way, remind yourself we're having questions at the end. Feel free to ask them if I didn't clarify. Larry, did I cover that slide well? Larry's my fact checker throughout. Okay, premise 2. 3 clear priorities emerged in adding space. If we're adding space, here's what we need to realize. We need worship space. You can really look at the first 2 of these as 1A and 1B. We need worship space because we don't fit in here. Now, this room could be a bunch of things, but it can't be a worship room for 2,000 people. You see what I'm saying? Second thing, children's space located close to worship. We are not going to build unless there is children's space close to worship. Why? Parents don't want to drag their kids across the country, and parents don't want their kids. Especially newborn babies, need to be close to worship. Now, is that proprietary? Is that kiddism? Yes, we gladly admit that. But I challenge you to find any church that's building that doesn't put that as a priority. So that is the priority. The third one is multi-purpose space. By the way, I forgot to cover something in the previous one. The 2000 church, let me set your mind at ease right now. We are not looking to build an auditorium that holds 2,000 people. I know, it's exciting. That would be really fun. But the main premise with that would be to create a worship space that we could do 3 services in to hold 2,000 people. That's real important. The main premise would be to build a worship center that we could hold 3 services in and hold 2,000 people. Why? Because we don't want to waste the church's money by building a big place that we may or may never get to depending on what God does. But if you build a sanctuary with 650 people, guess what? Christmas Eve, we pack it. Easter, we have 2 services and it's packed. You see what I'm saying? It allows us to double and to double. Okay, let's go back to this slide. Multi-purpose space. Why multi-purpose space? We desire for every dollar that's given to the building to be used for more than just one time a week. Now, some kid space has to be dedicated and it has to be for those reasons. But beyond that, what you got to do is you got everything that we do. We want to be available for great ministries like Young Life. We want to be available for the PCM to come and use it. We want it to be available for international ministry. We want it to be made available for adult small groups. We want it to be available, etc. We want the building to be used. You shouldn't build a building unless it's going to be used. All right? So that's very important. And those are the clear 3 priorities in premise number 2. Third premise. 4 steps established to ensure we are wise. The finance team has approved hiring of Generis to do a financial review. This is a very nominal cost, but basically what this does is this is a company that works with nonprofits to evaluate where they are financially. Why is this important? We can fool ourselves. We can fool ourselves into thinking, we can build this monstrosity over here, right? And then we shouldn't do that. This is a company that is used to working with churches, that's used to looking at growth rates, it's used to looking at financial giving, it's used to looking at the habits of the people who are giving and being able to say, yes, you are being wise with what God has said, or no, you need to slow down. And so that's why this is really important. That's why we have hired them. It's really relatively inexpensive in the long-term goal. The VAT has appointed a building team, ad hoc. That's very important, ad hoc. I'm about to tell you that a building team, there's been 5 people who have been selected to serve on the building team. And here's what the building team is hopefully going to do. Listen to the members of the church. Listen to you. And then come up with help work with the architects, work with the plans. And the reason we had to go ahead and form them now is because of the next slide, which I'm going to get to, the next part where it says the TW Church Company was hired for discovery phase. But these 5 people, the reason we don't want to have 13 people is because we listened to outside consultants who said 5 is the magic number. Because 5 people can make a decision and can represent the wide variety of people in the church. So what we've done is we've appointed 5 people who are serving in ad hoc for now that will be voted on and affirmed later by the church if you so choose to. Okay, the 5 people that have agreed to serve right now is Jeremy Bird serving as chair. Jeremy, stand up. Thanks. I'm not going to make everybody else stand up, but I want you to stand up. Jeremy was appointed because of his engineering, because he's served on the pastor search team, because of he's a good age demographic. He gets the idea and has worked with the fact-finding team. So he's familiar with those things. The other 4 people I'm not going to get into as much as, but Greg Smith is serving. Greg has been around for a while and has served on the plans for a long time. Then we have Howard Arnold. Where are you, Howard? Over there. Howard Arnold is serving. And then we have 2 ladies serving. We also have Heather Lindeman. Heather's over there too. Yay. And representing the new blood, or we felt it's important to have someone who is representing who has just joined the church lately, is Jill Bloom. So I don't know if you know Jill or not, but we would like you to know her. I don't think she's here, but I think I saw Donald. Yeah, Donald's there. His wife. So get to know Donald and you can harass her later. So this is the team that is functioning in ad hoc that would be voted on later if we get to the place where we say, yes, as a church, we are going to vote. The TW Church Company is also hired for a discovery phase. What is the discovery phase? This is where we find out if the 80% makes sense, the direction we think we're going. This is where they come up with numbers. This is where they come up with the idea of what we should build square footage wise, that kind of thing. So in order for us to do that, we could guess and we can guess, or we can pay someone who does this for a living, and it's a very relatively inexpensive in the long, bigger picture cost. And so we commissioned them and we've asked them to come along and to begin working with Jeremy and his team, as well as some of the senior staff, and just helping us to understand what our needs are so they can give us an actual cost and come up with an actual plan. Now, from there, a timeline has been established. I know we're covering a lot. April 2nd, tonight, the state of the church is given. Early April, we have the Generis Review and the TW Church Company do their discovery phase. That's going to be them coming in and doing a lot of work with the teams that they're going to be working with. Now, early May, here's where we get to. Early May, presentations will be made to the VAT, SST, and the building team at that time. From those three teams, our church will attempt to bring a proposal if the proposal is, like Generis says, yes, you're healthy enough to build, and we agree with that. Now, if Generis comes to us and says, we'll have that discussion. We're going to be very transparent with what they say. Does that make sense? Okay. But we're going to also trust that God's going to be in what he's in. And we're going to look at this, and then our goal is by mid-May, around May 18th, that's a Sunday night, maybe a Wednesday night, we're going to make a presentation to the church with what should be voted on. Why that time? I'm glad you asked. Next slide. This is not a timeline. This is a tentative timeline. In other words, this may change. June 8th, we would like a vote for the church to proceed in building. Now, why June 8th? Why May 18th? Because we have to present to the church 2 weeks prior to it being voted on. Okay? That's why May 18th is an important day. It has to be sometime around that week. Why June 8th? Because that is the day before VBS starts, and most of our church members are here. Why June 8th? Because after June 8th, we have June and July and August, and it's hard to get everyone here. Now, if it may come to we have to push this back, and if we do a summer vote, we're going to greatly open up the voting for absentee voting, okay? But our intention is to try to make it on a day when most of the people can be here to limit the absentee voting, because that gets a lot more complicated, okay? So what we would be doing is we'd be presenting a proposal to vote yes or no on. Then we'd also be presenting a proposal to verify the affirming of the names to serve on the building team. There also at that point likely may be a capital fund team, and there also is forming a prayer team, which you can talk to Tammy Bohr about if you have more information. She's kind of the person representing the VAT from that angle. So that's where we are. If all of that goes well and the church affirms, then the tentative timeline proceeds. Early fall. Actual plans voted on by the church. We will not have architectural plans. We will not be able to look in May at, this is what the building would look like. Why? That costs a lot of money. And I, as the pastor, don't want to spend the church's money without you voting on saying, yes, we're doing this. And so that's why, although it's easier to get you to vote when you see the plans, it's a step farther than I feel like we should go. And the VAT feels like we should go, at least in our conversations, without the church saying, yes, we affirm that. Also in fall, we'd have a possible capital campaign. Very tentative timeline. This is the hallelujah. March 2015, think more spring than March. It's just an arbitrary date. Spring 2015, a year from now, break ground. Spring 2016, ideally Easter Sunday would be great. 2 years from now, we are in new facilities. And this requires and assumes a lot that God is moving in all of this. So answers to questions you may ask. We are trying to avoid stages of building. We are trying to avoid the idea of, okay, this is stage 2, and once we get that paid off, we're going to go to stage 3. We're trying to do what we feel like God is asking us to do right now. We're not building a monstrosity. We're not building something huge. We're trying to build something wise and that can function well. Another question, will there be a transition plan? Yes. What does that look like? You will be inconvenienced. Get excited. I don't know what that looks like, but once we know the timeline more and once we know the plans more, guess what we're going to form? A transition team. Because there will have to be, because there's just problems. There are always problems. And one thing I would tell you is if you've ever been in a church build, who else built a home with their spouse? How many of you, your marriages survived it? No, I'm just kidding. Don't have that. Because if you've been through that, that could really create disharmony because people disagree. And that's when we have to come to realize, okay, we've got to pray through this and we got to realize that there's disharmony that happens when those times, okay? Third, we are not building a gym at this time. And what that means is it's not on the timetable. There are churches in town that have gyms that you can join. We don't really want you to join their church, but we were fine with you joining their church gym. And just realize that we wanted to offer unique space that's good for our church. And we felt like there's other churches that are offering that. And so that's the reason we came to that conclusion at this time. Okay, what can I do now? Pray. Pray some more. And then pray some more. Support the process. Some of this may seem a little harsh, so I'm going to soften it a little. Pray supporting the process by letting the teams do their jobs. You know what Jeremy doesn't need tonight? 14 people telling him what you think should happen. Because you know what Jeremy's at? He's at like step A. And I think they just need to get in and figure out, get what they're doing before they're hounded. And that's hard because we have opinions, but what I can tell you is if you look on down, you will be asked in time. Resist the urge to offer your suggestions unless asked, but you will be asked. One of the things we're trying to do with a team of 5 is to create somebody on that team will represent children's ministry. Somebody on that team will represent senior adult ministry. Somebody on that team will represent youth ministry, and then they will meet with those people and listen. Now, you will probably not get everything you want unless somebody wants to come and give us $20 million, and then we can get you probably what you want. There's going to be some give and take, but you will be heard. You will be heard. Okay? You may not think you're being heard, but you're being heard, okay? And so just know that's part of it. Avoid the temptation to jump to conclusions. That's pretty self-explanatory. Get excited. Because the reason to get excited is if God is in this, God has already provided the way. And if God is not, guess what? He has another plan for us. And so get excited because God is doing stuff. And no matter what happens, we're going to get excited because our ultimate goal is to stay on mission. And our mission, regardless of whether or not on May or June 8th, this church says, yes, we're voting on the church, or we don't have the money, or no, we're voting no. Guess what it's going to be? My mission is to make followers who are making followers, and we will do that. We will. Now, I'm going to have an opinion. And as you can see, I'm presenting you tentative plans, and that kind of is the way I feel like God is leading, but I'm not that pastor who's going to stand up there and says, if you love the Holy Spirit, you're going to vote my way. But what that means is you have a lot more on your shoulders if you're a member of this church to represent what God is asking you to represent. And I urge you and I beg you, abstain from voting unless you have diligently prayed over what is to happen in this church. Abstain, don't vote unless you can honestly look at me and say, I have prayed and I prayed hard about God discerning what we should do in this church. Because if we do that, even if we disagree, God will be glorified as we go forward because the mission will remain the same. The temptation tonight will be tonight to make the state of this church all about a building. Guys, it's not about a building. It's just not. I look around this room and I see the stories of people who've accepted Christ recently. I see the people who are excited about God's doing. Their families, their marriages are better, their lives, because God is doing something. And here's what I would say. If we as a church cling to God, we practice grace, forgiveness, mercy, love. We recognize that we are capable of mistakes, but God is in all, through all. And we say, God, help us to follow you. You haven't seen anything yet. So let's get excited for God to move. I'm going to pray. If you have little kids and you feel like you need to leave, feel free. If you want to go, and I'm going to remind you, we're having a celebration for the Oaks. I would like to pause and say right now, we're going to pray for the Oaks family. as their daughter has been violently sick. And so they stopped in Cincinnati, haven't even made it here. And so when you shake Trevor's hand, go and wash your hands later. But they wanted to be here tonight, and they send their apologies, but you didn't want them here tonight. So we're going to have that time. And I know Wendy Brackett and a couple others, I think Sarah Yahiro, have done a great job, and I think maybe even Sarah Furry, putting together a fellowship for Trevor and his family. So I would encourage you to stay for that. Even if you don't want to be in here for the questions, feel free. We're going to take questions for 15 minutes. Why? Because we got to cut it off at some point. And so we're going to do that. But let's pray just for a moment, if we might. Larry Baxter, would you mind praying just for us today?
Father God, we just thank you so much for what you're doing in our lives and the lives of our families and our community. We're excited and privileged and honored to be part of that. We just lift up Trevor and Cassie and his family. Ask that your hand would be upon them, upon the ministry and the friends that they leave behind. I pray that you would build relationships, Lord. Help them to draw near to those in whom you're working. Pray for their ministry and for the youth, for the great things that you'll be doing there. We thank you for all this time together, for the chance to serve you and to love you. And we pray that you would just raise up Daniel, help him to be seeking to follow you and to serve you with all his heart. And let us stand behind him unified as we make followers who make followers. In Christ's name, amen.
Thank you. Reggie, Bob, if y'all could grab a microphone. A couple ground rules for the question time. If you want to step out now, you may, by the way. A couple ground rules for the questions. Ask the questions that apply to the whole group. In other words, if you want to ask me a specific question that applies to only you, come find me afterwards. All right? That's my strongest encouragement to you. Second ground rule. I know this is silly, but I've been in enough church meetings for a long time to remind you there are children in the room. And your influence and the way you ask questions reflects their view of God. So ask questions. You can ask the hard questions, but do it with a smile on your face and in a good way. Fair enough? That was a little awkward, but I feel like I should always say that. All right. Questions, raise your hand, and then go ahead. And then while someone's asking a question, go ahead and raise your hand, and the other one will come. That was easy. Thanks.
What's the name of that company that's going to tell us whether we're financially healthy?
Well, they're not. I probably overstated whether or not they're financially healthy. It's called Generis.
Okay.
And it's their primary responsibility is to come and look at the generosity of the church. That's why it's called Generis. And what they're going to do is they're consulting us about ways to make sure that we are articulating the need for being generous. In other words, what the reason to be generous with missions. And also they're looking at our financial stuff because we've asked them to see if we're healthy as we think we are. So
Do they offer guidelines and encouragement as to what it looks like financially?
yes. What ends up happening is you work with them and they're doing like a 20-page report. I'm going to let Larry answer this because Larry's been working with them mostly.
Sure. Yeah, they'll be actually coming to visit next week. They'll be meeting with a cross-section of the church. They provide a number of services. They look at your financial and stewardship systems, how the offering is collected, a whole number of factors to determine both your ability to have a capital campaign and what that might expectations might have, as well as provide some concrete, practical things for ways we can improve our giving and generosity even today. And so, yes, they'll come back with approximately a 20-page report, giving a bunch of these information. We may or may not choose to do a capital campaign with them. We may not choose to get some financial coaching with them at a later date. But that's just a great starting point that they'll be doing with us next week.
So I assume we'll have the opportunity to financially support the decision and everything. Will our decision be go no matter what happens financially with our opportunities?
No, they do have some churches that after taking a close look at their capability, their answer back to them is, you guys just aren't ready for that yet. And I'm pretty sure from my discussions with Daniel and the finance team, if that was their recommendation, we would probably go with that and rethink things at that point.
Yes, and I would reiterate that we would rethink it and pray because for sure it would be a huge yellow light. What they would tell you in talking with them is they would say, we don't want to be a red light business, but we want to give you a green light or a yellow light. And so if they give us a yellow light, we're going to have some serious things to do. I will tell you in looking at where we've been over the last few months, they've pretty much said you're in good shape because our growth and our giving has been so exponential. So while I don't anticipate that, we want to be honest with the church and not just bull rush something through.
So will we have an opportunity to support money ahead of time to help in this building campaign?
Sure, right now.
I'm trying to think how to ask these questions in a more positive manner, so I'll have to keep thinking.
No, yes. Yes, and the honest answer to that is anybody can at any time give money to support the future of the building. And you can designate it for that. What Generis would want you to do is, how do you balance that? Because what ends up happening is a lot of times people will sit there and they go, okay, well, I'm going to quit tithing to give to this. Well, then the church can't pay to do anything. And so what they're just trying to help us to understand, especially when you have so many new people coming in. I think a big part what we're going to learn from them is, how do you get these new Christians to see the importance of giving? Without making it seem like we're a used car salesman, because that's how they can feel. So, good questions. Next. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that the demographics of the church and what's growing, and also wanting to grow small groups. Has anyone done an overlay between what the current demographics are, age and family-wise, against what small groups we're actually serving?
We've not done an overlay, so I could tell you that. Our small group situation is so interesting because what you have is you have some groups that are so established and so solid, and then you have some groups that are very casual about it. And so what I can tell you is what we're looking to do with small groups across the board. I'm not really answering your question, but I'm trying to, okay? I recognize that. We're trying to make it to where our small groups are kind of all the same, so that when you go to a small group, you know what you're getting. Now, that's going to take a little give and take, and that's why I want to have one-on-one conversations, because I need to listen from people. I'm not going to go out there and go, well, this is what we're doing. I think I need to listen from people who have really good small groups going and find out why it's working. But I think we as a church need to be comfortable that when we send visitors to these small groups, that we know what we're getting. With that in mind, we have not pushed as many of the small groups starting of the younger generation right now, basically because we don't know what we're pushing them to. Which is why on Sunday mornings, Larry's done an outstanding job in trying to get this connect groups going. And they've had great success. They've been doing those fellowships like we've talked about. And if you think about it, it's a very good, but it's just a Band-Aid for now. And there are other groups that have formed, and they're going well. But that's where we're at. Does that answer your question, Lindsay? You want to follow up? Okay. Somebody has one they want to ask and they're scared it's how it's going to sound. Go ahead. Greg's got one.
Does Generis do like a fundraising program? They have some kind of a plan that they use to help us raise?
Yes, Generis has, what they say, what makes them unique is they don't have the box and a plan. Like there's a lot of companies that say pick choice A or choice B. Part of the reason they do this original thing is they do it really cheap because they want you to use them for the long term. Does that make sense? And so I recognize that. I know that. I'm telling you that. It's not a hidden secret. But what they do is then they know you. And so they come and they listen to things like, for instance, does the pastor want to know who gives what in the church? The answer to that, by the way, is no. I don't know what anybody in this church gives. I don't ever want to know. Well, then that helps shape the way they do that. Now, that might be weird to you that some pastors want to know that, but in some churches, that's perfectly acceptable. And so they ask those kind of questions, and so then they kind of create a vision path for you to go forward that fits your culture in your church. So they don't have box plans. That's their big thing. We don't have box plans. We come up with a personal plan for you. Is that fair enough? Does that answer your question, Greg? Yes.
I'm all for change. Little older, so I like to scoot along slower than do it all at once. But one thing I guess that I missed because maybe lack of attendance in the summer because I camp, the logo was changed. Could you explain what that actually, the CC upside down?
I'm going to let Craig answer what the CC stands for.
Because it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, here's a mic.
See, it's fun when other staff is under the light.
Yeah. So I think we've had it it's been over a year now since we went to that.
No, it's because it was summer, early summer.
Yeah.
I just got here.
There's a lot more of a deeper explanation that we can talk about, and I'd love to talk to you about it if you want. But honestly, when it comes to what our logo actually is, we don't know. It's as simple as that. It really came down to a little over a year ago, we decided we wanted to go with some new kind of more contemporary look, something that'll catch the eye of the demographics that we're shooting for in our area, something that's going to be recognizable, something that's going to be rememberable. And so we chose the colors that we have now over maroon, and you have to ask yourself these things too. When our original logo was chosen, maroon was chosen because back then maroon was kind of the thing. So now we had to ask ourselves the questions: what's going to give us kind of like this life-giving feeling? Because the goal was when people see our church, when they see the colors, when they see our logo, we wanted to give them the feeling of, wow, that must be exciting. That must be a place that has a lot of life in it. And so we chose bright green. We chose, yeah, because of Matt's hair. So if he had orange hair that week, we would have gone orange. So, but he didn't. So yeah, just a second. And then honestly, with the CC thing, a lot of people thought at first, oh, it's like Calvary Reflecting Christ, or it's Calvary Church, or whatever it is. And yeah, it's all of those things. But actually, what it was Amy and I, we sat down one day and we were just throwing around ideas with the logo. We said we wanted to keep it simple, and we were like, oh, let's do this, and hey, maybe just flip that like that. And we were like, yeah, that's really cool. And that's kind of how our logo came up.
Is that a logo question?
I'm just going to help him out.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, okay.
Sure.
It's Calvary Church, but it's arranged in an infinity symbol, which is God, like the Alpha and Omega.
A lot of those things. Yeah.
We're going with that.
Yeah,
We're going with that.
That's it.
That's it.
We do want to, we officially have not, our name is still Calvary Baptist Church. We actually talked about this 6 months ago also a little bit when we talked about a little bit of, actually it was probably more than 6 months ago now, but when we talked about this and why we took the Baptist out of like the prominent name that's out on our sign, and we had good reason for that, and there still is. And if you guys have any deeper questions, like I said, we can talk about that in a different setting. But cburden@calvarybc.net. All right. And so really, a long answer to a really short answer. It literally came down to how can we spark the interests of our community around us.
It wasn't the number one thing I heard, but the honest truth of what I heard from a lot of people when they came in, when college students, young adults came in, they go, I would have never come into your church from the way it looked outside, from the sign. And I know that hurts a little bit because that sign means something to so many people. I get that. But I heard it a lot, at like 15, 20 times. And that's not an exaggeration. And so that's what we did. That's why we changed it, because we want to be, they would come in and they go, the inside's so different than the outside. We wanted the outside to reflect what the inside, and the simplest way to do it was to change our sign. So that was the intention. Matt uttered something that will not be uttered. Okay, somebody else. Anybody else? Huh?
More of a statement.
Okay.
We were involved in the church building program in Tennessee a number of years ago, probably 15, 18 years ago now, where they primarily built the Family Life Center with nursery and youth and a lot of the things that we kind of like, the children's ministry. And after they did that, I think the church more than tripled.
And some of you hear that and you go, yes! And some of you sit there and go, oh no. Because I know these things. Because I remember when I was at Auburn, and I was a campus minister at Auburn, and I talked with the student, and we doubled in size the first year I was there. And one of the students came to, he was redhead, so he's a nice guy. He came up to me and talked to me. That's right. And I remember he was as serious, and he goes, Daniel, I really think we're growing too fast. And I said, why? He said, well, I don't know everybody's name anymore. And I looked at him and I realized what he was saying. He said, I knew these people. I did my Christian life with these people. And part of me understands that. I really do. But I don't think we're in a place where we want to be saying, we need to stop because I'm uncomfortable. That's my strong opinion. I think we need to be positioning ourselves to allow God to move, which is why we came up with that 2,000 number, to double twice. When this church was built, it was built to, I believe someone told me that it was built to double immediately, and they did it almost immediately. And so we've been around the same size since then. And so we're trying to be proactive and be engaged for that in the long term. Thank you for your state. Two more questions, and then we're going to go, or no more if no one has any more. Corey. In March of 2016, what will my sermon title be? It will be Hallelujah or What Have I Done? One of the two. But I know you'll be preaching it, so thank you, Corey. Someone else. One of the other things I hear all the time while we're going to let Travis ask the last question. One of the other things I hear all the time is, I want to know what's going on. Here's my encouragement to you. Ask. Ask. Send me an email. Ask me. If you know anything about me, ask the deacons, ask the personnel team, ask the finance team. I fail in that I share too much, but I don't see that as a failure. I see that as being vulnerable before people. Now, you may not like what I have to say, but I'll share with you what I'm thinking. And what I would say is, if we then disagree, then let's get together and pray and try to come to the place. But I try as best I can to communicate, but there are people who don't want emails every day. They don't want an email every day with every information. We try to post on Facebook, Twitter, the table. We try to do the State of the Church twice a year. I try to, if you're on any kind of leadership team, when we get a leadership team, I share with you as much as I can, whether that's a deacon body, finance team, personnel team. Ask them because they know what's going on. I try to disseminate it, but short of me having coffee with everybody, I can't possibly let everybody know what's going on. We're not a church of 150. And it may feel like that if you come at a certain time and if you're at 9 o'clock and these are the same 120 people you worship with every week, you don't realize how big we are. And so I just can't. So ask me and I'll be glad to answer. Ask a staff member that you feel really comfortable with. Find a staff member you feel really comfortable with. It doesn't have to be me. But, find someone and then pick their brains. The staff has full permission to share with you what they can share with you. And they know very clearly, because I communicate that with them, what they can share and what they can't share.
Give me 8 hours.
Give him another 4 hours and then ask him. Yeah. All right, Travis, bring us home.
Yeah. Is there a current process in place to determine how to be good stewards of the space that would be vacated with a new building?
Okay, phrase that in another way so I can hear it correctly, because I heard two different possible questions from that.
Do we have a process in place that will allow us as a church to determine how to use the vacated space with a new building?
Okay, qualify vacated space.
Such as the worship center in here. If we add on to this building a whole new worship center.
It depends what the conclusions we come to.
Okay.
There are contingency plans, and I've told you before, I have backup plans to the backup plans to the backup plans, but that's not trying to be blunt, but it's just cart before the horse for me to share right now. I have, yes, but I'm not going to share those tonight. Is that fair enough? Okay. We're going to close right now. I'm going to ask that if the building team would come up here, and we're going to pray for them, please. Those who are still here. Donald, you can tell your wife that we prayed for her. So, if there are some people who'd like to come up and surround them, so maybe some ladies surround Heather and a couple men surround the men. I know this is old school, but we're going to go old school tonight and pray for them. And Corey Miller, would you mind representing the personal team? Come up and just pray for this team. Because you're a minister, I don't mind throwing you under the bus. While you're at it, just pray for our church and then dismiss us with a prayer. Thank you.
Father, we come before you